creeps, it's Cameron again, and welcome back to my channel where I talk about books, movies, writing, and all things spooky. On this episode of Library Macabre, I have my April book haul. So, in the month of April, I did a little bit better. January, February, March, each of those months I had about 60 books or more. This haul I only have about 45, a little less, so I did a lot better. So starting off, as always, with the review books. I have a pretty nice stack here. The first one you will see is Golf Curse, the new slasher novel from Cameron Rubique, which was the last video I posted. I did a review of this, so I'll post the video up there. You can go give it a watch and see my thoughts on this fun little book right here. I also have A Penny for Your Thoughts, which is by Robert Ford and Matt Hayward. I've read a couple of books by Matt Hayward, and I've talked about those on this channel before. And I've also read a short story by Robert Ford, which I thought was amazing. So I'm very excited to get to this. I think the two of them are going to be really good teaming up together. This book is released, I believe, in June on the 1st. Next, I have The Resurrectionists, which is the first book in the Salem Holly series. This is by Michael Patrick Hicks. I have yet to read any of Michael's work, so this will be a good introduction, as I have heard some great reviews about this one so far. Next is Soothing the Savage Swamp Beast by Zachary Magaha. And I have read Zach's previous book before. It was called Locker Arms. I'll post a review of that up here. I thought it was a really interesting book, very unique plot. And this one looks like it is no exception to that. This looks like a very unique kind of book. I love the cover. It's absolutely amazing. I also have book 2 of the Infinity Killer trilogy. This is by Patrick R. Delaney, and it is called Dante's Wicked World. I showed the first book in the trilogy last month in my haul. The author sent that one for review, and he went ahead and sent a copy of the second book. So I'm going to be reading these back to back at some point. From Matt Serafini, here is Rites of Extinction. This is published by Grindhouse Press. I did read Matt's previous book, which was called Under the Blade. It was a really unique slasher. I really liked that. So I'm very eager to get into this one. And most of these books are signed, but I really like the little scarecrow drawing that he did up there. It was really, really nice of him to do that. Gives it a nice little touch. Next is a book that I have absolutely no idea what to expect of it. It looks absolutely bonkers in the best way. This is called Impossible James, and it is by Danger Slater, which is a really cool name, by the way. Just take a minute to observe the cover there. That is really cool. This is kind of a, I'll just read the synopsis to you. It says, "My father was dying. There was no hope. Then he took a screwdriver to the brain, got pregnant, and found the cure for death. Impossible? That's my dad." That's the synopsis for you. But there is a blurb on the back here from Josh Mallerman. It says, "Danger Slater is fearless and should be ashamed of himself. Thank God he's not." This is going to be really interesting. Next is another bonkers looking book, and that is Lords of the Deep, which is by Tim Meyer and Patrick Lacey. I have read a few of Patrick Lacey's books. I think I've read like 3 or 4 by now. Tim Meyer is one that I have yet to read, so I'm very excited to get into some of his work. This should be a good starting place because it looks like a total Cameron book. I mean, there's a giant sea serpent on the cover, and apparently there are pirates in this, so yeah, I am all in. And the final book that I received for review is the first book in the Fright Vision series. This one is called The Cursed Coin, and this is kind of a modern take on Goosebumps, so it's a middle grade horror series. Alright, next I have a big stack of vintage horror paperbacks, as always. But before I get into those, I do have something that relates to vintage horror paperbacks. And that is this little promotional book of matches. This was a promotional for The Love of Audrey Rose, which was the sequel to Audrey Rose. This is pretty cool. I saw this on eBay and I couldn't pass it up. So I'm going to open it up here for you. And as you can see there, the matches actually have the book cover printed on them, which is really sweet. This was released by Warner Books as a promotional for the book, and it is really cool. I only spent $10 on eBay, which really isn't bad because it's in great shape. The matches were never used, so very, very cool. Just a nice little oddity to add to my library. So getting into the horror paperbacks. The first one I have here is called Eye of the Devil, and this is published by Guild Press, who I never heard about before. I saw this book in Leon's haul on over on the Paperback Mania channel, and immediately had to look it up and try to find a copy for myself because I just love the cover. This was published in 1989. I ordered this from Amazon off of the thrift bookstore, so that's always it's always risky. You never know what you're going to get with thrift books. It said it was in brand new condition, so I dove in and I ordered it. It was only like $10, but when I got the book, it's definitely not new. You probably can't see on camera, but all around the edges of the book there are, it looks like little teeth marks, like somebody was gnawing on it. And there's some creases on the book cover on the front and back. There's a big dent on the spine there. I would say it's in very good condition. It's not bad by any means. I mean, the spine isn't creased or anything, but definitely not new. So I was able to send some pictures to them, and they refunded the money, and they said to keep the book. So at least I got a free book out of it. That's really cool. And then I found an Etsy bookstore that had a whole bunch of vintage horror paperbacks for sale, and I found 4 that I have been looking for tirelessly. The first one is called Something's Calling Me Home by Maxine O'Callaghan, and this was published in 1991 by Pocket Books. I've heard this one is really good, and I have been looking for a nice copy for a long time. So I found a nice one without any creases on the spine. They also were selling a copy of Out of the Shadows, which is by Duffy Stein. A nice copy of that one. Next we have a book that was published in 1981 by Jove, and that is The Mask by Owen West, who is actually Dean Koontz. Owen West was just one of his many, many pseudonyms. Next we have One by One by Linda Lee. And I believe this is more of a thriller. It's not really a horror novel. But this looks really cool. This was published in 1977 originally, though this copy was published in 1979. This was published by Pocket Books. Next we have a copy of Conjure Wife by Fritz Lieber, and this was sent to me by Keely, who has a booktube channel of her own. I'll post that up there so you can go and check it out. I definitely recommend that you do. She reads a lot of horror, has some really good taste. But she found a copy of this and asked me if I had it, and I didn't, so she sent it to me, which was really sweet of her. This is cool. It's got a cool keyhole cover, and I'm loving the inlay there. Really, really cool. Very spooky. Next is one that I found in a bookstore, and I was really surprised to find this because I didn't know it existed. This is House of Mystery #2 by Jack Olek. For those who don't know, House of Mystery was kind of like DC Comics' take on Tales from the Crypt. I did not realize, though, that they actually had a couple of books put out that were actually told in prose, not comics. So this is one of those. Like I said, had no idea this existed. It was only $5 in mint condition, so I had to pick that up. The next one is a book that I definitely splurged on a little bit, and that is Pranks. This is by Dennis J. Higman. It's one of my favorite covers. I mean, just look at that. That is so weird. I have no idea like what exactly is going on there. That looks awesome. It's super cheesy, I know, but I love it. I don't know why. I have been wanting a copy of this book for a long time. I have tried over and over to get one that's in good shape. There was one that I ordered off of Amazon like last year that said it was in brand new condition, and it came to me, I'm not kidding, it looked awful. The spine was completely creased and like curved one direction. The book was like, there was a big splice down it and half of the back cover was missing. The thing was just totally torn apart, and I messaged the seller and I'm like, hey, you listed this in new condition and it's not. He said, oh, well that's the condition it was in when I bought it, so that's why it's new. I never read it. I'm like, dude, that's not how it works. Sorry. I had to argue with him a lot to get him to refund my money. And I've tried to get this book several other times and it's just never worked out. So I spent $20 on this one, and it is in beautiful condition, and it's a first printing of this edition. In my opinion, it was worth the 20 bucks. I try not to spend that much on these paperbacks, but I was starting to get desperate. So I'm just happy I finally have a nice copy of this one. Next is Twilight Time by Rick Hatala. This is published by Zebra in 1994. It's in very nice shape. I got this on eBay for I think like $2.50. So I got a good deal on that one. I also got a copy of Deathwalker, which is by R. Patrick Gates. This was published by Dell Abyss in 1995. And from the same seller as those last two books, I bought a nice big stack of YA horror books from the 90s. So we have a first edition of Sunburn, which is a book in the Fear Street series by R.L. Stine. Next we have a copy of Deadly Detention, which is by Eric Weiner. This was published by Z-Fave, which was an imprint of Kensington. So it's basically Zebra books, but for teenagers in the 90s. This one I actually had a copy of, and it was in really bad condition, but this one looks really nice. Another Z-Fave book is Scream, book number 6. This is called New Year's Evil. It is written by Michael August. I love holiday horror, so this is going to be a lot of fun. And I'm getting really close to completing my Scream book collection. I believe there were 9 or 10 books total. And speaking of, here's book number 8, which is called The Crush. And another series that was published by Z-Fave at the time was The Nightmare Club. So here is book number 7. It is called Sleigh Ride. Again, holiday horror, which is one of my favorite things. I did have a copy of this one at one point, and it was in really nice shape, but this one was in nicer condition, and it was only like $2 extra to add this to my cart, so I went ahead and got this copy as well. And we also have the 10th and final book in the Nightmare Club series. This one is called Die Laughing by Vincent Courtney. And I was at Half Price Books, and I'm always keeping an eye out for Fear Street books when I'm there, and Point Horror, and I don't usually have much luck. I used to be able to find a ton of those books at Half Price Books, but lately they've just gotten very rare. But lo and behold, I was in the young adult section, and I turned around and there was a whole shelf full of Fear Street books. And I'm not kidding, I whistled. I totally catcalled the Fear Street books. And it was really loud, and I immediately got embarrassed, and I heard somebody else in the store totally mock me, and I heard a whistle. So that was embarrassing. The whistle was completely involuntary. I did not mean to do it. It just happened. It just shows you how excited I get about Fear Street. Then I started looking at the Fear Street books, and I realized there were only 2 of those books that I didn't have. So I went ahead and got those ones. The first one is Fear Street Sagas number 3. This is called Forbidden Secrets. And number 5, which is called The Hidden Evil. And then also at Half Price Books, I found book number 12 in the Erie, Indiana book series. This one is called They Say. It's got the artwork on the inside there, which is cool. I was a huge fan of the Erie, Indiana TV show. It's absolutely amazing. All of the episodes are on Prime. So if you have Amazon Prime, go watch them. They're free. They're awesome. It's like Twin Peaks for kids. I think you'll like it. And the last book that I found at Half Price Books is number 25 in the Shivers series by M.D. Spencer. This one is called A Ghostly Playmate. I'm getting very close to having all of the books in this series as well. I was also able to find a first edition hardcover of Moon by James Herbert. It's a pretty nice shape. I got this for about $3, which was a pretty good deal. I finally ordered a copy of What Do Monsters Fear? This was Matt Hayward's debut novel, and I've heard great things about this one. Next we have Husk by Rachel Autumn Deering. I read one of Rachel's stories in the Welcome to the Show anthology, and it blew me away. One of my favorite stories in that book. So I was very eager to read more of her work, so I ordered this one from Amazon. Looks really, really good. And then of course I already did an unboxing video of my April Nightworms package. So I will go ahead and show what books I got in that package again if you missed the video. The first one here is A House at the Bottom of a Lake by Josh Malerman, which I have heard some pretty good things about. And it also came along with a copy of Inspection by Josh Malerman, which is his newest book. And it is signed by him, which is cool. And then they also included a copy of Rue Morgue magazine featuring Inspection on the cover. Here is House of Penance, which is released by Dark Horse Comics. This is the newly released deluxe edition of the comic. I've been hoping that they would do a hardcover because Paperback was released and I wanted to read it, but I was really holding off for a nice hardcover edition. So I'm glad that happened. It's super nice, it's ginormous. The artwork is incredible. And lastly, I was at one of my favorite bookstores, which is called Dark Star Books, which is in Yellow Springs, Ohio. And I found a copy of The Bobbsey Twins at Maple Hill. This is by Laura Lee Hope. The Bobbsey Twins were kind of a mystery series in vein of like Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, only it was aimed at slightly younger kids. I don't have any luck finding original first edition, first printing copies of these books because they're very old and they're very hard to find. But I was able to find a first edition, first printing of this entry in the series, which is book number 39. This one was published in 1946, and like I said, this is a first printing. It was only $8. It was a great deal, so I'm glad I was able to pick that up. And then also while I was at Dark Star Books, I found an entire box of free books right outside the store. So I got a whole bunch of kind of pulpy mass market paperbacks. The first one here is Cat of Many Tales by Ellery Queen. A really cool little pulpy paperback there, published in 1959, though it was originally published in 1949. Here is The Other Body in Grant's Tomb, which is by Richard Starnes. This one was published by Pocket Books in 1953, and it is a first printing of this edition. So that's very cool. It's actually in really nice condition. Here is Never Kill a Cop, which was published by Pocket Books in 1959, first printing. This next one I think is my favorite of all of the free books that I got. This just looks amazing. It is called The Angry Woman. And here we have a girl fawning over a photo of Cary Grant, and this angry woman in the background. The tagline says, "Would this ruthless woman let her marry any man?" So this is a trashy kind of soap opera pulpy book. And then we have a copy of Rayleigh's Eden, which I've never heard about before, but it looks like it's kind of a southern gothic. And then we have a copy of The Ginger Man by J.P. Donlevy. And then last we have Make My Coffin Strong, and this is by William R. Cox. This is a gold medal book. And I was mostly drawn to the James Dean look-alike on the cover there, to be honest. But yeah, this looks really cool. And that is all I have for this haul. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Later, creeps.